Good morning and welcome to the fourth hour with Craig Belfrage. Great to have you here. David, good morning to you too, my friend. Thanks so much for being here. Hope you'll tell your friends. Seriously, got like-minded friends. You got to let them know about what we're doing. If they're on YouTube, by all means. Especially, I think, maybe you've got children who are younger or grandchildren. Um, Tell them about what we're doing and get them on board. So thanks to all of you for being here. I very, very much appreciate it. So the big story this morning is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is the choice. Kamala Harris choosing Tim Walz of Minnesota as her running mate, and we'll get you some reaction here. The reaction from the Trump campaign, they said they called Walz a dangerously liberal extremist, and I want to get into more details of the statement they released. The Trump campaign said it's no surprise that San Francisco liberal Kamala Harris wants West Coast wannabe Tim Walz as her running mate. Walz has spent his governorship trying to reshape Minnesota in the image of the Golden State. While Walz pretends to support Americans in the heartland, when the cameras are off, he believes that rural America is mostly cows and rocks. And we heard that from some. I thought it was particularly telling of our Minnesota listeners who called in the final hour of the Greg Belfrage show this morning talking about Walz, and boy, the distaste was almost dripping off their tongues. Wasn't that incredible? Listen, which is why I made such an appeal. Would love to hear from folks in Minnesota. What do you think of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz? What do you think about him being the Democrat running mate? And they had a really hard time with Walz. He is not well received by a number of people in Minnesota, which means then how well received is he going to be on the national stage? The statement from the Trump campaign went on: from proposing his own carbon-free agenda to suggesting stricter emission standards for gas-powered cars and embracing policies to allow convicted felons to vote. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Remember that? Him out there holding it up, everybody to see the proclamation, convicted felons allowed to vote. They say Walz is obsessed with spreading California's dangerously liberal agenda far and wide. If Walz won't tell voters the truth, we will. Just like Kamala Harris, Tim Walz is a dangerously liberal extremist, and the Harris-Walz California dream is every American's nightmare. So that's the press release from the news release coming from the Trump campaign. Their reaction to Kamala Harris choosing Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. And it's just crazy. I wanted to get to some of my emails because I got some great emails. There was one I shared right at the end of the program, and I'll share that again in a moment. This is a new email from Coral, who sent me this and said, I'm wondering if this race is a test by the DNC and globalists, how much they can gauge if this country will take the lie of socialism by voting for the Harris ticket, or if they can't get through it and the country chooses and votes for Trump conservatism. Even if Harris loses, God willing, they may just see how far the country has lost its way by putting out this extreme leftist ticket. By the way, Minnesota also just passed and Walz signed a bill full of a bunch of unrelated items, one of which now defines gender surgery as medical necessity. Yeah, that kind of stuff. It's just not going to fly with a. I got to short my headphones here. Excuse me. Just not going to fly with a number of people around the country. Great email, which I really appreciate emails, even if it's any time of day. If it's near the end of the program, never fear, because if it's great email, I'll share it here on the fourth hour. My email address is greg.belfrage@kelo.com. And then again, this was from Corrine, and I shared this right at the conclusion of the program this morning. And she says, I was born and raised in Minnesota and moved to Sioux Falls in the fall of 2020 solely because of how he handled the pandemic. 100% just as radical as Harris, will not help her campaign at all. What he did to our communities and our children by shutting everything down for so long was nothing short of abusive, in my opinion. My children will never gain back the opportunities they lost from missing school for a whole year. That was crazy. All of those shutdowns and businesses lost so much and went under left and right because of the shutdown. The way he handled all of the riots over the George Floyd death was despicable. Yeah, more on that in a moment. Folks are remembering that big time on X this morning because that is everywhere. Because I searched Tim Walz to see, okay, what are the latest posts on X revolving around Tim Walz? And it's pretty astounding. So more on that in a moment. Anyway, Karine went on to say, I just feel like she's hoping to secure Minnesota. I'm not so sure it was going to be blue this year, she said of Minnesota. So that's what Karine believes, that Kamala is trying to, she feels that the tide maybe was turning a little bit in Minnesota, and that's why Kamala picked Minnesota Governor Walz. I don't know what the thinking was. I just know it's a gift. And I said this during the program this morning. I mean, seriously, Tim Walz, that is an absolute gift, I think, for Republicans as this moves forward. I promised, these are, and I want to get the latest here. Let's update this. Tim Walz, the latest post, libs of TikTok. This was Minnesota under Governor Tim Walz. Fires, the downtown Minneapolis fires. Everybody remembers that. Flames, and I will tell you, some months after that, I was in downtown Minnesota after the pandemic. So it was some months afterwards. Once you could kind of go back in, and I went down, there was okay, this will strike you as goofy. There's a comic book store and collectible store, all kinds of great stuff. In the very area that was hit by this, and to drive by those buildings, burned to the ground, the devastation, boarded up windows, spray painting, graffiti everywhere, just the absolute mess that occurred. And Katie and I talked about it, and I told her, I don't want to come back. I don't want to come back here. I mean, I seriously don't. I do not want to come back. I cannot imagine living in the midst of all this. Matt Walsh said, this is the image. And again, it's Minneapolis fires, people cheering as they're starting fires. This is the image that defines Tim Walz. During the Floyd riots, he allowed a mob of thugs to burn a police station to the ground right in the middle of Minneapolis. Yeah, that was shocking. Everything you need to know about him can be seen here. 1,000 words, as they say. Kamala HQ, welcome to the ticket. Oh, man. And there's a lot of posts here. End wokeness. 3 months ago, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz replaced their state flag with a new flag resembling a Somali regional flag. So a lot of reaction. And again, on X, there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions, but some are incredibly thoughtful. I think what Matt Walsh and Libs of TikTok are saying, spot on. So I think there are going to be a lot of images and comments, and the record of Tim Walz, I think he's going to have a tough time defending a lot of these things. So it remains to be seen, but that's her pick. And then there's an interesting piece also this morning at the Washington Examiner. They said, has the headline caught my attention, has Harris already peaked? And it said the presidential election may turn on whether Vice President Kamala Harris is closer to her peak or her rise has only just begun. And so last night, Harris inched ahead of Donald Trump in the two-way national real clear politics polling average. Yeah, I don't. A lot of this, seriously, the polls. And now I'm not saying that she's got no chance. I'm not saying it's foregone conclusion. I'm just saying I don't trust these polls. I do not trust the media enough to believe any poll they put in front of me. Honestly, I don't. I just don't. So, what this race is going to be, as far as I'm concerned, anybody's guess. Has it gotten close? My advice to Donald Trump would be don't take anything for granted. And, I'm glad to see the Trump campaign immediately responding to Walz and his record and what he's done. Um, um, I think to harm Minnesota rather than to benefit Minnesota. Um, it's just wild. But I'm not taking any of that for granted. I think we really just we have got to assume because the media has shown time and time again, and especially since Biden has withdrawn from the presidential race, the media has shown that they, I mean, it's suddenly Kamala, and they will do anything to get her elected. I mean, they are working overtime nonstop. So a lot of these polls, I just, again, the media loves, and with respect to those, who are writing about what's going on in the race. Yeah, polls are the only indicators we've got. Those are meant for the campaigns. They're not meant for you and me. And they're not meant, I don't believe. Now, this is what I'm saying. I don't believe that they are meant to be the subject of endless stinking news stories to the over and over again to the point that you want to retch, you know. Um, let's just get out there and let's hear from the candidates and what they believe and their vision. And I think, it'll speak for the candidates will speak for themselves um, rather than polls. The media is using polling as a tool against their enemies. That's what it boils down to. I mean, pure and simple. It's so a lot of this. Washington Examiner is a great website. I'm on it every day, multiple times a day. There are stories there that I really appreciate, and there are stories like this one that questioning. They're saying, Democrats hope this is a trend. Um, there are external events, they say, that could nudge the race in either direction. Harris announcing a running mate. Democrats gathering for the convention in Chicago. Why? Why are they gathering? I mean, I get it, but isn't the convention all about choosing who it is that's going to represent your party? I thought that's what the convention was about. So what is it now? Nothing but a rally. That's all it is. And that's okay. You want to hold it, but let's call it what it is. It's a rally. Because there's nothing meaningful coming out of the Democrat convention. We already know, they didn't want to wait. They had to choose Kamala ahead of time. Overwhelming number. So it's just too much. One Republican pollster told the Examiner that it was actually good for the party to lose the false sense of a landslide. And he said, this is waking Republicans up. It's not going to be a cakewalk. We have to work for it. I agree with that. Take nothing for granted. Work for it. Senator Ted Cruz complained about Republican overconfidence and the year of celebration at the GOP convention in Milwaukee. So there are a few who are feeling that way, and that point I understand, and it makes a degree of sense, at least to me. So I want to thank you for being here. Looking at your comment, Sean, I want to increase the size of my screen here a little bit so I have a easier time reading that. There we go. Sean saying conservatives need to bring 10 like-minded friends to vote. Undeniable numbers of actual votes are the only thing that will overcome the Democrat scheming. Yeah, I hope that's the case. It's a great point. If you've got folks who haven't voted, now and I mentioned this CBS News YouGov poll this morning on the during the show, and I found that interesting. And I'm going to see if I can find it here really quickly because one of the things that really jumped out to me, let's see if I've got it here, was okay, 2,100 voters that they talked to. 2,100, that's a pretty good sample of people that they talked to. How often do you vote? 74% said always. And now that surprised me because actual voter turnout, as we know, I mean, there are a number of people who are not even registered to vote. They don't go vote. And even among those who are registered to vote, actual voter turnout is abysmally low, you know. But so can that be true? 74% of people say they always go vote, yet then you see voter turnout and it's terrible. So, so I don't know. I don't know what that says. Does it say that people lie to pollsters? Probably. Probably. That's what we've got going on. People, oh, I always. Oh, yeah, I always vote. Absolutely, I always vote. And then election day comes and it's election day? Who knew? So, and that's all I've got for you today. I hope you'll hit the like button. I hope you'll tell like-minded friends. I hope you'll be here tomorrow. I know I'm piling a lot on you, but I'm really grateful you're here. I very much appreciate it. I want you to take care, my friends. So long until tomorrow, and may God bless.